Welcome to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
So today we're really digging into this situation involving Padre Fábio de Melo. Happened down in Joinville at a cafe.
Right, and we've got quite a few pieces to sift through.
Yeah, we do. There are the initial reports, of course. Then Padre Fábio's own account, actually. 2 different versions from him.
And the video footage, which seems pretty key.
Definitely. Plus, what the cafe cashier apparently said, and even a statement from the person who was with the Padre.
So our goal really is to unpack all these different perspectives, try and get a clearer picture of what actually went down.
Exactly. Figure out the core points of, disagreement.
It's fascinating how one small incident can spiral, so many layers once you start looking.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The initial complaint from Padre Fábio de Melo.
Mm-hmm.
He described an encounter where he felt a cafe manager was extremely impolite. It was about the price of some sugar-free dulce de leche.
A price discrepancy, right? The shelf price versus the system price.
Yes. He said the manager told him the marked price was wrong and basically, tough luck. The higher price was the only one available.
Okay.
And the Padre apparently mentioned to the cashier, look, I'm not going to make a big deal. But he did make the point that, businesses should honor advertised prices.
Which is pretty common consumer expectation, I think. Seems straightforward enough on the surface.
That's what you'd think, but that's where things start getting complicated.
Because the story definitely takes a few twists.
It really does. So the immediate fallout was that the cafe manager was reportedly fired.
Right, fired because of this complaint.
Which is a pretty serious consequence. But then this video footage surfaces.
The video.
And this video seems to, contradict the Padre's first version of events, particularly the part about a direct conversation with the manager.
So the video doesn't show them talking directly?
That seems to be the case, based on the reports.
Yeah.
And that obviously raises some big questions about that initial description of extremely impolite.
Yeah, if there was no direct exchange, it definitely makes you reconsider that initial characterization. Impolite how, exactly, and directed at whom?
Precisely. It forces you to look closer. And it seems Padre Fábio de Melo did some reconsidering, too.
Because he put out a second statement.
Exactly. After the video came out and after the news about the manager being fired.
What did he say in that one?
Well, first he said he regretted the manager losing their job. He acknowledged that was a serious outcome.
Okay, so acknowledging the consequence.
Yes. And then he clarified his original story. He stated that the manager actually didn't speak directly to him.
Oh, interesting. So a change there.
A pretty significant one. He said the manager instead spoke loudly, kind of for everyone nearby to hear, saying the price in the system was the correct one and it couldn't be changed.
So not a direct personal slight, but more of a general announcement maybe? Spoken loudly?
That seems to be the gist of the second account. It's a definite shift from the first version.
It really is. The first sounds like a direct confrontation. The second sounds different, more indirect.
What do you think might explain that shift? Could it be, how things felt in the moment versus looking back?
That's possible. Perception is tricky. Maybe the initial feeling was one of being treated rudely, even if the interaction wasn't exactly as first described. Or maybe seeing the video prompted a reevaluation.
Could be. And then you layer on the cashier's account. Ricardo Feltrin reported on this.
What did the cashier say?
According to that report, the cashier denies the manager was rude at all.
Okay, so directly contradicting the impolite description.
Yes. And the cashier also apparently confirmed the manager didn't speak directly with the Padre or his companion.
So that aligns more with the video evidence and maybe even the Padre's second statement, but contradicts the first one.
Right. It adds another piece suggesting the manager's actions might have been interpreted very differently by those present. Or perhaps weren't rude at all, depending on who you ask.
It really muddies the waters around the manager's actual behavior.
It does. Now, there's another thread here, too. The person with Padre Fábio.
His companion, right? Identified as Leandro Rodriguez.
Yes. And he put out a statement online, too. Apparently surprised people were talking about him.
What was his angle?
He basically said he usually just posts fitness stuff and is in a, quote, different phase of life now, and had abandoned his previous content. Didn't really explain what that other content was.
Okay, a bit cryptic.
Which, of course, just invites speculation online, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mentioning unspecified other content is like waving a red flag in the digital world. People get curious.
And they did, because then another video popped up from a woman claiming that this other content Leandro Rodriguez used to create was, adult material.
Okay, so that adds a whole other dimension, though it's not directly tied to the cafe incident itself.
Not directly, no. But it shows how quickly the focus can shift, right? From a dispute over dulce de leche to the personal lives and pasts of the people involved.
That's very typical of how these things unfold online. The original issue gets tangled up with personal details, gossip, unrelated controversies.
It really snowballs.
And it distracts from the core issue, but it definitely fuels public interest.
And through all this, we have to remember the initial trigger and consequence. The complaint led to the manager reportedly being fired.
That's the real-world impact, isn't it? Someone lost their job.
It underscores the weight a complaint can carry, especially from a public figure. And it makes the accuracy of that initial complaint feel even more critical.
Definitely. If the first account wasn't the full picture or was maybe an inaccurate perception, the consequence for the manager is still very real and very significant.
So let's try and pull this together. We start with a complaint about rudeness. That leads to a firing.
Then comes contradictory evidence of the video, the cashier statement.
Followed by a revised story from the person who made the complaint.
And mixed into all this is public attention shifting to the Padre's companion and his past.
It's quite a tangled web.
It really is.
Yes.
It's a classic example of how narratives get built and then challenged. The first story sets the stage, but then new information forces everyone to rethink.
So the core conflict, it seems, boils down to this. Was the manager directly rude, as first claimed? Or was it something less direct, maybe not rude at all, as later accounts and the video suggest?
That's the crux of it. The initial claim of a direct, impolite exchange versus everything that came later pointing towards a different kind of interaction, or maybe none at all.
Even the Padre's second statement moves away from that direct confrontation narrative.
Yeah, and it highlights how subjective perception can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
How memory works,
Yeah.
or maybe how we frame things initially versus later. What feels like a personal insult in the moment might be recalled differently.
So for you listening, I think the big takeaway here is just how complex even a seemingly minor incident can become. You've got multiple viewpoints, video evidence, reported statements.
And it really shows why it's important not to jump to conclusions based on just one side of the story. You need to see all the pieces.
It also puts a spotlight on the power of public statements, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially from public figures. Words have weight. A complaint, even if made without meaning major harm, can have huge real-world effects on someone's life, like losing their job.
Makes you think about the responsibility involved in sharing experiences publicly.
It really does. There's a need for care, perhaps,
Yeah.
consideration of the potential impact.
Definitely. So here's something to chew on, a final thought for you. When you look at how this whole story unfolded, the different versions, the video, the online reaction, what does it tell us about how fast narratives form today?
And how quickly they can be challenged or even fall apart in this digital age.
Right. And maybe what kind of responsibility do we all have, especially people with a platform, when we share our side of things, knowing how fast those words can travel and the ripples they can create?
It's certainly food for thought, the intersection of perception, memory, public platforms, and real-life consequences.
Definitely something to think about after this deep dive.